Have you ever felt like you were someone's entire world until suddenly you weren't even worth a text back? One moment you were everything, the next you were nothing. Or did they make you feel like the answer to all their prayers, then treat you like the cause of all their problems? From late night phone calls and love songs, from I can't go a minute without you declarations, to suddenly feeling like a burden they had to carry. And after disappearing, after discarding you, they come back as if nothing ever happened, and you find yourself running into their arms grateful. If this sounds familiar, you may have unknowingly been pulled into one of the most psychologically destabilizing patterns in toxic relationships, the idealize-devalue-discard cycle. If any of that sounded familiar, don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you'll never miss a video that helps you make sense of what you've been through. Also, I want you to know I've created a workbook to support your healing after a narcissistic relationship. You'll find the link to it in the video description below. Let's get into it. It begins like a fairy tale. In the idealization phase, the narcissist places you on a pedestal so high, it feels surreal. You're the best thing that ever happened to them. They say things like, I've never met anyone like you. I think I'm falling in love with you. Where have you been all my life? You're flooded with compliments, attention, and flattery. They mirror your interests, your values, your dreams. They become everything you didn't know you were looking for. You feel seen, known, chosen. Neurologically, your brain responds with a surge of dopamine and oxytocin. This is attachment on overdrive. You bond quickly, deeply, and most importantly, before any red flags have a chance to register. But what you don't realize is that this intense admiration isn't about you. It's about how you make them feel. You are the screen. They're projecting their fantasy. This idealization isn't rooted in genuine discovery. It's a curated illusion, one that's specifically designed to hook you emotionally before trust has been earned. What seems like deep emotional resonance is actually a blueprint. They're rapidly mapping your insecurities, hopes, and soft spots. They may echo your traumas, share eerily similar past experiences, express values that align perfectly with yours. This alignment feels magnetic, fated even, but it's manufactured. What you experience as intimacy is, in fact, a calculated strategy. The more you share, the more they gather. And crucially, they move fast, faster than normal emotional intimacy develops. You might feel flattered that they're opening up, saying you're their soulmate, or suggesting you move in together after only a few weeks. But that's not passion. It's pressure dressed as intimacy. Then it shifts, not always dramatically. Sometimes it's a sigh, a rolled eye, a subtle insult dressed as a joke, but the tone changes. You're too sensitive, you talk too much, you're not as exciting as you used to be. They begin to withdraw. You can feel them slipping away, but you can't quite explain it. So you try harder, you apologize, you overcompensate, you become who you think they want, hoping to get back to that first version of them, the one who adored you. This is where the psychological damage starts to deepen. You begin to self-correct, to question your worth, to internalize their dissatisfaction. It feels like love is slipping through your fingers and you believe it's your fault. This phase is not just painful, it's disorienting. The love bombing made you feel so valuable that the contrast is now unbearable. You start craving their approval, not out of love, but out of fear. And here's the dangerous part. Every now and then they throw you a breadcrumb, a compliment, a small gesture, enough to keep hope alive. This is intermittent reinforcement at its most devastating. You start chasing the high again without realizing you're being conditioned. You start to shapeshift. You tone yourself down. You question your memory. You edit yourself before you speak. You're no longer showing up as who you are. You're performing, hoping to prevent the next emotional withdrawal. You may also notice your world shrinking. Friendships fade, hobbies die off, even your personality feels quieter, less vibrant, because you're not living, you're managing them, managing their moods, managing yourself. This is often when subtle forms of psychological abuse emerge. Gaslighting, blame shifting, triangulation. They may compare you to others, an ex, a friend, someone they just happened to meet. These comparisons erode your confidence. You find yourself working harder just to feel like enough. The devaluation phase can last weeks, months, or even years. It can be cyclical, fluctuating between temporary warmth and cold dismissal. It keeps you hooked through hope. You begin to associate love with unpredictability, believing that intensity equals depth, but it doesn't. It equals instability. And still, you believe love might return if you just hold on. Eventually, they discard you. Maybe it's abrupt, a cold goodbye, silent treatment, ghosting. Maybe it's drawn out, a slow fade riddled with indifference. Maybe they cheat, lie, or push you until you leave just so they can say you gave up. Regardless of the form it takes, the message is the same. You are no longer useful. But here's the twist. The discard isn't always permanent. Sometimes they come back, not because they love you, because they need something. Attention, validation, control, and the cycle begins again. Each round chips away more of your self-worth. Each return feels less like love, more like survival. You might find yourself missing the good moments, even though they were always laced with manipulation. You might still crave their validation, even when you know it's toxic. That's the hook. That's how deep this goes. They might resurface during a vulnerable moment, a breakup, a loss, a moment of weakness. They know exactly when you're most likely to respond. And they'll come bearing apologies, nostalgia, and just enough charm to reopen the wound. And if you let them back in, the cycle restarts, but faster. The idealization is shorter. The devaluation hits harder. And the discard cuts deeper. This cycle isn't random, it's methodical. It follows a psychologically predictable pattern. First, idealization builds the dependency. You're lifted so high that you believe no one else could possibly make you feel this way. Second, devaluation confuses and disorients. You're pushed just far enough to keep trying, but not so far that you leave. And finally, discard strips your identity. When they withdraw their attention, you don't just miss them, you miss the version of yourself you were when you were loved by them. It's a psychological trap designed to undermine your sense of self while keeping you emotionally tethered. And each cycle trains you further to tolerate emotional neglect and mistreatment. You begin to equate pain with passion, chaos with chemistry. You stop trusting your own perception because nothing about this connection is stable, but it is familiar, especially if you were raised in environments where love was conditional. And this is where the true trauma lies, not just in what they did to you, but in what you started doing to yourself. But why does it hurt so deeply? Because this cycle is trauma disguised as intimacy. It mimics secure attachment only to dismantle it. Your brain becomes hooked not on the person, but on the emotional roller coaster they create. There's also a cognitive dissonance at play. Your mind can't reconcile how someone who once treated you like a treasure now sees you as disposable. So you try harder to make sense of it. But there's no sense to be made because you were never truly seen, only used. The pain lingers because it triggers old wounds, abandonment, unworthiness, betrayal. It mirrors childhood dynamics where love was inconsistent or had to be earned, and it awakens a desperate hope. Maybe if you're good enough, they'll come back and love you right. But they won't, because they never did. What they offered wasn't love. It was control disguised as connection, attention that came at the cost of your peace, intensity mistaken for intimacy. Your nervous system learns to anticipate chaos. And even when you leave, your body might still respond to those old patterns, seeking, longing, bracing. You might even begin to mistrust healthy relationships. Safety feels boring. Kindness feels suspicious. That's the residue of trauma bonding. Breaking this bond requires more than distance. You have to clear out the emotional damage they left behind. You have to find your way back to yourself. And at some point, you have to decide you're done letting someone else define who you are. So how do you break the cycle? First, you recognize it for what it is. Naming it takes away its power. When you see the pattern, you stop blaming yourself. You stop chasing validation from someone who never offered love, only control dressed as affection. Red flags? Sure, they're there, but you've probably seen them already. What matters now is not the warning signs, but the clarity that they were never going to change. It's not about identifying every toxic trait. It's about noticing what it costs you to stay. Are you walking on eggshells, silencing yourself, dismissing your needs? That's the true measure. Healing requires you to believe deep down that being loved shouldn't feel like being tested. Leaving may not feel triumphant, it may feel like failure. But what you're actually doing is refusing to play a game rigged against you. And that's not failure. That's freedom. You don't need to earn love, especially not from someone who made you forget your own worth just to feel like they had some. Because here's the truth: anyone who truly loves you will never make you question your reality, your value, or your voice. Thank you for being here with me today. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and hit the like button if this video resonated with you. I'd love to hear your experiences in the comments. If you need support finding your way back to yourself, I've added a resource for you in the description. Go check it out. In the next video, we'll talk about how narcissists use the silent treatment as punishment to maintain control. I hope you'll join me for that one too. Until then, take care of yourself.